Welcome back to my channel. For the first project, I'm using this square sign from the Dollar Tree. I've taken it apart and ripped the paper off, and as you can see, it's in kind of rough shape. I was hoping to paint the front piece, but because it's in such bad shape, I decided to cover it with scrapbook paper. I cut the scrapbook paper to fit the front side of the frame. I'm painting the back piece of the frame with white chalk paint. This will be my bunny's face. I'm using Mod Podge to attach the scrapbook paper. I decided that I didn't like the color of the scrapbook paper, so I'm painting it with a lighter gray color. To give the appearance of a fuzzy, fluffy look around the outside of the bunny's face, I use a fluffy brush to apply some black paint, tapping most of the color off on a paper towel and gently applying the color around the frame. Most of the black will be covered, but I do want some of it peeking through. To give this piece more dimension, I do the same procedure using white paint and some different shades of gray. With a wet paintbrush, I do some shading with light gray paint along the inside edge of the frame. I did an internet search for bunny faces and traced the pattern on the back side of the frame. I filled it in with black Sharpie marker, but I will be painting over it. Using a fluffy brush, I apply the cheeks. Now I have to make a major decision about what to use for the nose. I have a foam heart sticker from Walmart and a wood heart sticker from the Dollar Tree. Both of them are adorable, but I end up choosing the foam heart because I like how it looked, and it's also easier to work with when I insert the whiskers. Using black paint, I fill in the areas where I applied the black Sharpie marker. Using a fluffy brush and that gray paint, I'm just going over the shaded area to give it a more fuzzy look. This will help it blend in better with the outside frame. I do the same thing using black paint. To blend it all together, I do the same thing with some white paint. I use some white watered down paint to do the details in the eyes. To make my rabbit ears adjustable, I use some floral wire, fold it in half, and twist it at the bottom. These will be inserted inside the ears. I use the white fluffy towel from the Dollar Tree for the ears. I glue them fluffy sides together. To make the whiskers, I wrap some wire around a paintbrush handle and I cut it in different lengths, so I'll have 3 pieces of wire on each side of the nose with the longest wire in the middle. I use my ancient needle nose pliers to twist the ends in, not only to give it a more finished look, but also to protect your skin from any sharp edges. I use a thicker wire to make the holes to insert my whiskers. I use a little bit of glue inside the holes to hold the whiskers in place. I like the whiskers to be a little longer and more wild looking, so I stretch the wire a little bit. Kind of reminds me of my kitty, who also has really long, wild whiskers. The bunny's face looks perfectly cute painted as is, but to really bump up the cuteness factor, I add some more details. It's really amazing what a few dots and lines can do to add details to the face and really make it stand out. I'm ready to start assembling the sign by gluing the front piece to the back part of the frame and gluing the nose and ears on. I make a few minor adjustments to the whiskers. I apologize for the changes in lighting. When I'm getting my craft on, sometimes I'm not aware of what's going on around me, including lighting and staying in frame. Now that my ears are dry, I'm going to turn them right side out and use my fingers to push the fabric out and shape the ears. I insert the wire into the ear and pull it to the outside edge. I cut some light pink felt to glue to the inside of the bunny ear. To give the bunny ears a finished look, I tuck in the edges of the towel and wire and glue the opening closed. I trim any excess towel to give the ears a nice straight edge. I think Miss Bunny is looking adorable so far, but my project would not be complete if I didn't break out my ultrafine Sharpie marker. I just add some squiggles and dots along the outside edge of the frame. Just when I thought I was done, I decided to add more squiggles and dots to the inside edge of the frame. Before attaching the ears, I decided to use a little black spatter paint on the face. I make some adjustments to see how I want the ears placed on the frame. You can use Fabri-Tac or hot glue to attach the ears to the back of the frame. Because I added wire to the inside of the ears, I can fold them down and adjust them how I want to give her a more whimsical look. Here's a final look at the finished project. I think she turned out absolutely adorable. You could attach a picture hanger on the back, or you could glue some tumbling tower blocks to the bottom of the sign so it would stand up, or just lean it against something. Using a square frame is definitely not something I would have ordinarily thought of for a bunny face, but I think it turned out really cute. For project number 2, I'll be using this bunny trail sign from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to be taking that cute little bunny off the front of the sign. I always try to use the front of the sign if possible, but sometimes it does cause some damage when taking these off. But it can be easily repaired with some glue. I do end up flipping it over and using this as the back side, but I do like the back side to look good, so I repair any damage and paint it. Before I start the buffalo check pattern, I base coat the arrow with white Waverly chalk paint. I start by layering pieces of masking tape. You could also use painter's tape, and I start in the middle of the arrow and place that tape as straight as possible horizontally. Press down on the tape firmly. The next piece of tape is your placeholder tape. This is going to ensure that all of your stripes are the same width. Make sure you place each strip of tape right next to the edge of the last piece of tape. You don't want to have any space between the pieces. You'll place another piece of tape right against the edge of that placeholder tape and press down firmly, and then you can remove the placeholder tape and use it on the next stripe. You're going to repeat this all the way up the sign. After all of your pieces are in place, it's a good idea to go over and make sure all of the tape is pressed down firmly. For this project, I'm going to use 3 different shades of pink, a light pink, medium pink, and a dark pink. If you'll be mixing your own colors like I did, make sure that you have more than you think you'll need to do any touch-ups. Using a sponge, apply the paint to all of the areas that are not covered by tape. It's best to do a very light coat with minimal paint on your sponge to ensure that it doesn't seep under the tape. You can always add additional coats if needed to get the color that you want. I'm using makeup sponges from the Dollar Tree. They sell them in a pack and I just cut them into small pieces. The 2 most important things to remember when doing this buffalo check pattern is to go very lightly with the paint. I'm a very impatient person and I do get a little heavy-handed a bit later in the video, and I end up having to do some touch-ups. The second tip is to make sure that your tape is pressed down firmly to the wood. After all of the areas are painted, you can go ahead and remove the tape. Even though the paint is still wet, just be careful that you don't transfer the paint from your fingers onto the sign. So far, everything's looking good and I have nice, crisp lines. Let the paint dry completely before moving on to the next step. We apply the tape the same way that we did before, but this time we place the tape vertically. I started by placing the first piece of tape in the middle and working my way outward, but in retrospect, I wish I had started at one of the ends to avoid having any really small areas that need a stripe. For my medium shade, I use the same color pink, but add less white than I did for the previous color. I apply the paint in the same way that I did before, making sure to cover all of the areas that are not covered by tape. For this step, we don't remove the tape. We leave it right where it is and let the paint dry completely before moving on to the next step. For the last step of creating this buffalo check pattern, we're going to apply the tape again horizontally, making sure that you place the tape exactly where you did in the first round. It's very important to make sure that the tape is placed precisely, otherwise your stripes will not line up, which is exactly what I did, and you'll see that in a minute. With my darkest shade of pink, I'm going to go over the board exactly as I did before, covering any areas that are not covered by tape. You can see here that I do get a little heavy-handed with the paint, and some of it does seep under the tape. Once you've painted all of the areas, you can go ahead and remove all of the tape. Again, just be careful so that you don't transfer any paint from your hands onto the sign. The real magic happens once you start removing the vertical strips of tape. All of my paint lines look nice and crisp so far. Unfortunately, I didn't line the tape up to the stripes from the first round, and now you can see how those checks are not completely lined up. The mistake is most noticeable on the top horizontal stripe, so I end up having to remix my second color to do some touch-ups. This is what it looks like after I've retouched the areas that need it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think it's very pretty. Using one of the egg-shaped ornaments from the Dollar Tree, I gave it a base coat of Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and now I'm just lightly going around the edge with a pouncing motion, adding a couple of different shades of gray as well as burnt umber along the outside edge. I penciled in some eyes. I'm just filling them in with a black Sharpie marker. I will end up going over it with paint. Originally, I was going to put an iris, which you can kind of see that I have it penciled in, but I do end up changing that. Fill in the eyes with some black paint. It is best to water it down a little bit to make it easier to work with. I do eventually end up going outside of the line a little bit and having to compensate for that on the other eye. They don't come out perfect, but they come out close enough. I use a stir stick from the Dollar Tree. I repaint the heart, and this will be the nose for my bunny. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more like it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your crafty friends. To make the whiskers, I wrap some wire around a paintbrush handle. Just like in the first project, I'm going to cut the whiskers in different lengths. I turn the ends of the wire in using a needle nose pliers, just to keep the sharp edges away from skin and to give it a more finished look. I stretch the wire out just to make the whiskers a little longer. Using white paint, I add some detail to the eyes. I use an ultrafine Sharpie marker to add the eyelashes and eyebrows. I love this cute little wooden heart as a nose, but I decided to change it for a larger nose using 2 pieces of felt and sewing them together. I used pink embroidery floss to sew the 2 pieces together, but in retrospect, I wish I had used black just to make it stand out more. Using a fluffy brush, I apply candy pink to make the cheeks. The bunny's face is looking pretty cute so far, and it would look just fine as is, but once again I decided to up the cute factor by adding some details using white paint. Using a stylus, I apply some black paint to make a tiny mouth. I added some small dots to the eyes just to give it more detail. I hold the nose in place to figure out where I want to attach my whiskers. I make some minor adjustments to the whiskers. And I use hot glue to attach the nose. Using the felt nose was also a better option to hide the wires for the whiskers. I fold the pipe cleaner in half and twist it near the bottom. These will be the inserts to my bunny ears. This will allow me to move the ears and adjust them to give it a more whimsical look. Using a fluffy white towel from the Dollar Tree, I cut 4 pieces for the ears. I want the fluffiest side to be the outside, so I put the fluffy sides together and glue them. Turn the ears right side out, and I push the fabric out to shape the ears. Insert the pipe cleaner into the ear and pull it to the outside edge of the ears. Just like the first project, I cut some light pink felt for the inner ears. You can use hot glue or Fabri-Tac to attach the ears to the back of the head. To clean up the ears, I just trim any excess pipe cleaner and towel and glue the edges together. I painted these letters from Walmart using chalk paint in the color celery, and I go around the edges, lightly shading using the color moss. This is what they look like after a little shading. I attach the letters, starting in the center and working my way out, just to make sure that the letters are centered the way I want. I can't remember if I found these little wooden eggs from the Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby, and I just painted them and trimmed one of the eggs so they fit snugly together. I glued a tumbling tower block to the back of the bunny head to give the project dimension, but also to raise it up off the sign a little bit because of those ears glued to the back. It wouldn't lie flat anyway. Of course, I take my ultrafine Sharpie marker out and I add some squiggles to the border of the sign. At the end of the project, you'll be amazed at how much of a difference this makes. I add some tick marks and cross hatches just to give it a little more detail. You can see that I've added some squiggles and dots to the letters, and this really makes them pop. I really love how this is looking so far. I decided to add more squiggles and dots to the bunny's head. I didn't plan on doing this originally, otherwise I would have done it before I attached the whiskers. I don't like using the hangers that come with the Dollar Tree signs, so I made my own using a pipe cleaner and I attach it to the back of the sign. This is what the final project looks like. I'm just totally in love with this little bunny sign. You can see that I've added some more squiggles and dots to the buffalo check pattern, and that really makes it stand out even more. I'm really happy with how this turned out. and I will definitely be using the buffalo check pattern in future projects. I hope you love these projects as much as I do. Please let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. I love to hear your feedback. I do have several more Easter and spring projects, so make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on future videos. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. I'll see you in my next video.